family and I lived in the heart of Georgia, an area not known for many stories, and the one I'm about to share is a testament to that fact. My cousin, whom I'll refer to as Bob, had been serving on the police force for about 5 years. When he joined, he had that youthful enthusiasm and earnest desire to make a positive impact, like many who begin in such roles. He genuinely aimed to better the lives of people in his community. One day, they received an alarm call from a house situated between Macon and Roberta, a place long assumed to be abandoned. That description paints a picture of the house's condition. When they arrived, they found an elderly man sitting on the front steps, his hands buried in his pockets. Bob and his partner approached, only to witness the man's distress. More than mere tears, he was sobbing uncontrollably, murmuring about something dreadful. Despite their attempts to question him, he was unable to provide any coherent answers. Within moments, Bob's partner called for backup, realizing the man was deeply traumatized. With caution, Bob drew his gun and ventured inside the house. The air inside carried a putrid stench. He recounted to me the chaos that awaited him in the kitchen and living room. The house clearly belonged to hoarders, with pots and pans stacked to the ceiling, spoiled food littering the table, and takeout containers scattered across the floor, a repulsive sight. Bob attempted to call for any potential occupants, but received no response. Despite his years of training and experience, his pulse quickened, his gun ready as he scoured the vacant living room. Moving down the hallway, the putrid odor intensified. Steeling himself against the overwhelming stench, he covered his nose and mouth, opening the bedroom door. There, lying on the bed, were 2 corpses, their pallid skin covered in swarming flies. Despite the queasiness, Bob investigated further, a decision he later regretted. One body was male, the other female. Their decaying faces were attracting flies, some even perching on their lifeless eyes. As he inspected the woman's body, he made a grisly discovery. She cradled the small, lifeless form of an infant. The sight was unbearable, especially as a large cockroach emerged from the baby's mouth. Bob rushed out of the house, collapsing outside and vomiting, unable to contain the horror he'd witnessed. When additional units arrived, a more comprehensive investigation ensued. The elderly man, initially encountered by Bob and his partner, turned out to be a former colleague and close friend of the deceased couple. They had worked together at a peach packing company. Concerned by the absence of his friend for over a week, he had come to check on them, only to witness the gruesome scene in the bedroom. According to reports, the couple had developed an opioid addiction following a surgery about a year prior. Initially, they began with painkillers, but the addiction spiraled as they progressed to snorting and injecting heroin. Tragically, their neglect led to the death of their young daughter, who was only a few years old. Confronted with the devastating reality of their child's lifeless body, they succumbed to despair and jointly decided on suicide. The coroner discovered a fatal dose of heroin in their bodies. Though Bob continues to serve on the police force, the experience deeply affected him, causing him to struggle with excessive drinking. Seeking help through therapy, he has made progress in managing his drinking habits. However, haunting memories of the child's corpse persist in his dreams, the baby's cries echoing in his nightmares. I once received a call about a possible break-in. A young woman living alone called in fear and said that when she came home, she found a broken window on the first floor, but nothing seemed to have been taken and no one was inside. But when she went upstairs to go to bed, she thought she heard footsteps downstairs. Immediately after that, communication with her was cut off. She said this, and the woman did not answer attempts to call back. I answered the call and drove to the small house. I knocked on the front door, knocked again a minute later, and pressed the bell. After a minute, I tried again, this time knocking very loudly and ringing the bell again. But there was no answer this time either, so I decided to look around the house. I walked around the house and found a broken window that would be easy to climb through. I poked my head out into the dark house and shouted, "Police!" It was quiet. I relayed to the cameraman that the house was quiet. A few more police officers were on their way, but I didn't want to wait in case there really was someone in danger in the house. I radioed that I was going to climb into the house through a window, and then I did. Going through the broken glass, I made my way into the kitchen. I pulled out my gun and started moving around the kitchen, hearing the glass crunching under my boots. I yelled into the house to emphasize my presence as a police officer to anyone who might be inside. I didn't hear any footsteps, so I headed upstairs, considering that the woman mentioned hearing them downstairs, indicating her bedroom was likely upstairs. As I ascended, I maintained a moderate pace, not overly quiet but not making unnecessary noise. The uncertainty of the situation lingered, uncertain if there was someone armed inside, or if the woman was indeed alone in bed. "Ma'am, it's the police. Are you in here?" I called out, and a soft female voice from upstairs responded, "Yes." Following the voice, I entered one of the bedrooms, finding a woman seated in bed, covered by the sheets. She glanced up as I approached, and I asked if she was all right. Her response carried a slight tremor, noticeable in her voice. In the dimly lit room, thanks to the moonlight filtering through, I could discern the distress on her face. I explained that I was responding to her call and inquired why she disconnected and didn't answer the phone. She stuttered, claiming there was no one present. It dawned on me what might be happening. I glanced towards the closet, giving a subtle nod, but she weakly shook her head. Not there. I checked beneath the bed, gesturing towards her, and this time she nodded in confirmation. Uncertainty weighed on me regarding the next steps, 1,000 thoughts racing. "All right, ma'am, I just need you to sign this report, acknowledging my visit and confirming there was nothing unusual," I suggested, trying to navigate the delicate situation cautiously. She agreed, got out of bed, and walked toward me. As she approached, I led her out of the room. Then, holding the gun at the ready, I shouted, "Get out from under the bed!" My hands trembled as I saw a shadow slowly appearing from under the bed. "Hands up! Drop your weapons!" I ordered. The weapon clattered to the floor. It turned out to be a gun. A middle-aged man in black crawled out from under the bed, raising his hands in a sign of surrender. I made a quick arrest and took him outside just as backup arrived. When the woman heard footsteps upstairs, she hung up the phone for fear that the intruder might overhear the conversation. That's why she didn't answer when the intruder took her at gunpoint. She believed the police were about to arrive, so instead of running away, the intruder threatened to silence her and hide under the bed. I am relieved that I understood the situation, otherwise it could have taken a different, darker turn.